Can everyone hear?
Checking. So we should be live now.
Okay, I see it, but I don't know if they can hear me.
I'll check and see if I can hear you.
Yes, everything is good. We hear you well.
You can hear me well? Okay. If I do this.
I'll check and see if I can hear you.
Yes, YouTube is on and Zoom is on. We're good.
You can hear me well? Okay. If I do this. Yes, YouTube is on and Zoom is on. We're good. Dear friends, if we could all mute our mics, please. We're about to begin. Thank you very much. We're going to start with a song. Thank you, Maggie June.
Look at me, follow me, because I am. Look at me, follow me, because I am. Abdul Baha, Abdul Baha. Hold the candle, how gives it light? It weaves its life away, drop by drop, in order to give its flame. Whether you eat, whether you sleep, whether you are comfortable, whether you are well, whether you are ill, whether you have friends or foes, whether you receive, so you must carry. Look at me, follow me, because I am. Look at me, follow me, because I do You're with the fire of God's love and perfect kindness, even as one soul. Take no thought for yourselves or your lives. Whether you are comfortable, whether you are whether you are flexible, whether you are singing praise or he must care not at all.
Thank you very much, Maggie Hartman, for that lovely gift of music. To begin the delegates report from the 115th Baha'i National Convention. How exciting. We have friends here at the Austin Baha'i Center. We have those joining on Zoom. Thank you so much for being here, as well as those that are watching on YouTube live stream. So thank you very much. And thank you, Nabil Yazgani, for all your IT work, as usual. Thank you, thank you. So dear friends, the National Baha'i Convention took place this past May. Let me make sure my clicker is working. Let me just do this. Am I ready? Thank you. Okay, it should work now. So going back, okay, just a check. There it is. So this is the group. These are 171 souls from various parts of the United States who were elected by their community to represent them in electing the National Baha'i, the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States. And just a few facts about this group. There were 74 women, 97 men, and the age range from 71 to 80 was 25%. So a quarter of the souls who attended were 71 to 80. We had 1% at 81 plus. So that was interesting. There were 9% 31 to 40-year-olds in this group. We also had 9% 41 to 50-year-olds. And the 51 to 60-year-olds were about 18%, 20% of the group. And then the 35% were 61 to 70-year-olds. So the majority were very seasoned individuals and seasoned Baha'is. It's a very challenging, grueling session. As you can well imagine, I'll go over the agenda with you all of continuous consultation, it feels like. So if anyone here has served on any groups, committees, institutions where you're conducting consultation, imagine days of it, and you will see how challenging the process is. And so to be older, to be sitting there and to really, it was remarkable to see the dear friends who attended. There's another, in terms of demographics, there was one Native American, there were 3 Asians, there were 2 Hispanics, 2 who identified as Middle Easterners. There were 12 multi-ethnic individuals. And then we had 42 African-American friends. There were 39 Persian friends and 70 white or Caucasian friends. So that should give us a sense of who is in this makeup. And so in terms of absentee ballots this year, there were a total of 10 who were voting by absentee. And I have some information here. This might be interesting as we're deepening on the Baha'i elections. This is a spiritually based Baha'i elections. It's also good to know some of the data. That's why I'm starting with some of the data. In terms of numbers of years served as a delegate. So first-time delegates, 22 individuals were first-time delegates this year. And there were 15 that this was their second year, 12 who have served for 3 years, 74 anywhere from 4 to 9 years who've been elected as delegates, 37 up to 19 years, and 11 souls who've been there for 20 years. It's a very long time, it feels like, but you know, when you are called by the community, you serve. So those are some of the demographics around the group that you're looking at. It's very small, but I'm sure those online are looking closer to see if they know anyone from this group. So Suzanne Hansen was the other delegate that many of us know and love. She's in this group. And if you look closely, you will find a lot of Baha'is that you know from other places in the United States. So I invite you to look closer at this photo. So our first day was we prepared for the convention. We had the unbelievable privilege and bounty of coming together as the convention before the delegates were seated, which is how the convention begins. And I'll explain that process. But this is beforehand. We were together in the hotel that we were staying on the top floor. We could see the temple from kitty corner of one of the windows. And we were in small groups at different tables. Just you came in, grabbed a cup of coffee, sat down. There were materials ready for us at each table. And we got the chance to prepare for our, to receive guidance and prepare for the service by the Continental Board of Counselors that were there representing the Universal House of Justice. And so these are some of the highlights from the deepening with these counselors. These were the two beautiful souls who came to work with us and deepen us. Counselor Nwandi Lawson on the left and Counselor Farah Rosenberg on the right. And so we reviewed some guidance together, and Deepen consulted on it. Of course, the March 25th, 2000 letter from the Universal House of Justice to the Baha'is of the world, the May 16th, 2013 letter to the Universal House of Justice, from the House of Justice to the delegates gathered at various Baha'i national conventions, October 29th letter from the Universal House of Justice to all who have come to honor the herald of a new dawn. This was the anniversary of the birth of the Bab, and selections from the writings of Abdul Baha. So from the May 16th letter to the delegates gathered at the Baha'i National Convention, it might be helpful to review some of the guidance and see what was it that the delegates, what was shared with us, so to prepare us for this. Laura, can you read this? Is it too small, or let me see. I'm going to bring the phone to you. You just have to hold it like that. Yes. Go ahead, please.
This is May 16, 2013, to the delegates gathered at Baha'i National Conventions. You now gather in national conventions to carry out your 26.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's extraneous. That was from cut and paste.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Your own sacred responsibilities in the Baha'i administrative order. Foremost is the election of the members of your National Assembly, when you will choose individuals who can meet the pressing requirements of the progress of the cause at the present stage of its development. Our letter dated March 25th, 2007, was intended to strengthen the Baha'i electoral process, and we urge you to give renewed consideration to its salient points. In the features and outcomes of this electoral process that distinguish it from contemporary practices, we find not limitations, but dawning points of profound implication. The delegates, as well as the generality of the believers, uphold the purity of Baha'i elections, scrupulously avoiding electioneering or discussion of who should or who should not be a member, even when specific names are not mentioned. For not only does the Guardian prohibit reference to particular personalities, but he also states that we should refrain from influencing the opinions of others. Collectively, the Friends strive to purge themselves of every trace of worldly tendencies, pursuit of personal ambitions, promotion of individuals, contest, and partisanship, which can corrupt and distort an election's spiritual character. Delegates are obliged to become intelligent, well-informed, and responsible electors, so as to be able to make a wise choice at the election time. They enjoy the unfettered right to choose from among those eligible, whether it be to retain members or to select new ones. The community wholeheartedly embraces the result of the election, confident that the delegates have cast their ballots for those for whom prayer and reflection have inspired them to vote.
Within the administrative arrangements of the Baha'i community, there are a number of spaces that allow for the exchange of views, including the cluster reflection gatherings, institutional meetings, and the 19-day feast. The National Convention is another such occasion, but unique in that it brings together the National Assembly and elected representatives from all parts of the country. The conduct of this consultative dimension of the convention calls for thoughtful attention. 16th of May, 2013, the delegates gathered at the Baha'i National Conventions. Shoghi Effendi stated that the National Convention should fulfill the functions of an enlightened, consultative, and cooperative body that will enrich the experience, enhance the prestige, support the authority, and assist the deliberations of the National Spiritual Assembly. Although delegates are to offer their views in full, frank, and unhampered manner, he advised that the time not be spent on problems of secondary importance, and that the disruptive forces, which are but the outcome of human passion and selfishness, should be resisted. Instead, the guardian expected those assembled to approach their task with absolute detachment and to concentrate their attention on the most important and pressing issues in order to obtain a deeper and broader vision of the cause through an increase in the spirit of unity and of wholehearted cooperation. The unfettered freedom of the individual should be tempered with mutual consultation and sacrifice. He explained, and the spirit of initiative and enterprise should be reinforced by a deeper realization of the supreme necessity for concerted action and fuller devotion to the common well.
May 2013. Throughout the community, as the processes of the divine plan have become more and more complex, the nature of discussions on matters pertaining to growth and development of the faith has evolved. A distinctive conversation is carried out, sometimes formally and often informally, at various levels and in different configurations. In every setting, each participant, whatever the nature of his or her service, provides a particular contribution and takes away fresh insight. From this rich set of interactions about experience unfolding within the plan's framework for action, consensus on strategies and plans emerges naturally. Among the institutions, discussions flourish in an atmosphere of love and genuine respect, and unity of thought is readily achieved. And in settings such as cluster reflection meetings and gatherings of tutors, children's class teachers, or animators of junior youth groups arranged by the Training Institute, aspects of decision-making related to expansion and consolidation are taken up by the body of the believers, enabling planning and implementation to become more responsive to local circumstances. This conversation of the Baha'i world, grounded in allegiance to Baha'u'llah and safeguarded by firmness in his covenant, increasingly transcends the habits of speech characteristic of an age preoccupied with trivial or misdirected interests. With time, accrued experience, and continued guidance, this ongoing conversation comes to be distinguished by a more worthy etiquette of expression and gradually clarifies ambiguities, expands participation, airs concerns, strengthens bonds of love and association, refocuses endeavor, reconciles differences, resolves problems, and contributes to happiness and well-being.
Your consultations with the National Assembly at the convention take place within the context of the larger set of relationships that bind the plan's three protagonists and must increasingly reflect the features of this distinctive conversation. Each year, the Rezvan message sets the stage for the discussions at convention by conveying a sense of the current progress of the Baha'i world and the work that lies ahead. Your contribution, though free and frank, is not characterized by insistence on personal opinion. While there may be a wide range of important topics, attention to the progress of the 5-year plan and the requirements of its remaining years cannot be neglected. You bring to the convention insights gleaned from the conversations unfolding within your region. In this way, you enrich the perspective of the National Assembly and become informed of its hopes, challenges, and aims. You enhance your own understanding of the affairs of the cause from a national perspective and rededicate yourself to the community's common enterprise.
The Universal House of Justice, October 2019. To all who have come to honor the herald of a new dawn. This brings us to the crux of our case. The matter at hand is a challenging one and requires candor. There are many noble and admirable causes in the world, and they arise from particular perspectives, each with its own merit. Is the cause of Baha'u'llah merely one amongst them? Or is it universal, embodying the highest ideals of all humanity? After all, a cause that is to be the wellspring of enduring justice and peace, not for one place or one people, but for all places and all peoples, must be inexhaustible, must possess a heavenly vitality that allows it to transcend all limitations and encompass every dimension of the life of humanity. Ultimately, it must have the power to transform the human heart. Then let us, like the Bab's guest, observe attentively. Does not the cause of Baha'u'llah possess these very qualities? If the teachings brought by Baha'u'llah are what will enable humanity to advance to the highest levels of unity, then one must search the soul for the right response. The multitudes who recognized the Bab were summoned to heroism, and their magnificent response is recorded by history. Let everyone who is awake to the condition of the world and to the persistent evils that warp the lives of its inhabitants heed Baha'u'llah's call to selfless and steadfast service, heroism for the present age. What else will rescue the world but the efforts of countless souls who each make the welfare of humanity their principal, their dominating concern?
Selections from the writings of Abdu'l Baha. Number 45. They must, when coming together, turn their faces to the kingdom on high and ask aid from the realm of glory. They must then proceed with the utmost devotion, courtesy, dignity, care, and moderation to express their views. They must, in every matter, search out the truth and not insist upon their own opinion, for stubbornness and persistence in one's views will lead ultimately to discord and wrangling, and the truth will remain hidden. The honored members must with all freedom express their own thoughts, and it is in no wise permissible for one to belittle the thought of another. Nay, he must with moderation set forth the truth, and should differences of opinion arise, a majority of voices must prevail, and all must obey and submit to the majority. It is again not permitted that any one of the honored members object to or censor, whether in or out of the meeting, any decision arrived at previously, though that decision be not right, for such criticism would prevent any decision from being enforced.
Thank you very much. So we were blessed to have so many thoughts and so much guidance from the counselors. There was so much wisdom that was shared with us. Here are some that stood out from Counselor Nawandi Lawson. She said that the 9-year plan and other recent messages from the House of Justice don't speak to enormous shifts in action, though they do speak to a shift of consciousness. It's a very interesting thought. I'm just going to pause there for a moment. Shifts in consciousness are perhaps the hardest of all because we are human beings and God bless us, we love to get into a pattern, she said. Without the guidance of the House of Justice, I would simply fall into patterns that are most comfortable for me because they are things that I know. Can anyone relate to any of this? Everyone here is nodding yes. The shift in consciousness is one that takes place at the level of a community, certainly a cluster or region, but most importantly, it takes place in the privacy of one's own chamber. The willingness to detach myself from just continuing to do the things that I find very comfortable because I'm a human being and I love patterns. Can I be a little bit disrupted in my comfort so that we may actually achieve the goals that the House of Justice has set before us? What a great question. We are at a marvelous point in history, and it is time to perform great deeds, and everyone, even those who have not yet heard of the call of Baha'u'llah, are feeling it. We needn't be concerned about the results of current approaches and various avenues because of our assurance that mankind is coming to maturity and our central quest, which is the oneness of all humanity. People are coming to a higher level of understanding that the development of new systems of administration represents new ways of managing complexity. It's a very interesting word. And it's beneficial to know how change happens. And they're very curious to learn that there are means by which change happens that don't involve fighting one another, taking sides, oppressing, or colonizing groups of people. We can look to experience from the worldwide use of Training Institute. From the very first book of the Training Institute, this new type of social actor is being raised. Each and every one of us has some means by which we can contribute to raising this capacity for administration. These were some of the thoughts that she had. It was very loving in terms of being patient and with ourselves and also with each other, to be compassionate with ourselves and each other, but also be willing to change and shift in the consciousness. All right. The next set of wisdom was from Counselor Farah Rosenberg. Every effort is an expression of love for Baha'u'llah, she said. The Institute process is a central aspect of this plan for the next couple of decades. There is an urgent need to increase the number of people involved in the process. How do we facilitate the content of the Institute process with a certain level of quality? We have to read our reality much more accurately. So how do we read our reality more accurately? Okay, so at the convention, we reviewed the Rizwan 2023 annual report. Here is a link to it for anyone who's interested in seeing it online. There are some statistics that are here that are very hard to read for folks in the room, but probably not as difficult for folks online. And they have to do with national statistics overview of the Ruhi courses and core activities that are happening. The one down below left is not surprising. Of the 4 core activities, which one do you think we have the most of? Which is devotional meetings. That's right. That everyone thinks that's the easiest one to set up, and look at the blue versus everything else. So that's interesting to know. And then let me just scoot over here. Homefront pioneers, we have in the past 12 months, there have been 60 Homefront pioneers that have been deployed, which is lovely. And then what else I can point out, because we're here, US Baha'i population on March 1st, 2023 is 177,880. That's how many souls are right now on the registered books. And the programs of growth that are happening around the country. And you can, of course, see there's home, Texas, we can see. And then in the heart of Texas, you see us. 604 programs of growth, 357 are intensive. And we in Austin are considered one of the ones that are doing intensive program of growth. And you can see that. Okay. There were also highlights from the Treasurer's report. And there is a video online that I'll make sure once the streaming ends, both on Facebook and on YouTube, I'll put a link to that talk. This magnificent man, as we all know, he gave an amazing report. I have the printout of it here, and I'll pass it around for people to look at. And what is so interesting is that he started with a quote from the House of Justice about releasing the society building power of the faith in ever greater measures. And that's how he couched the talk that he gave and the overview of the report. Here are some of the highlights from the Treasurer's report. The 46.2 million in national fund contributions was part of a 59.5 million flow of giving, which also included support for the building of the Shrine of Abdul Baha, the International Fund, the International Temples Fund, and the Continental Fund. More than 16,200 individual believers accounted for $29 million in national fund contributions, with 6.6 million coming from Baha'i-owned businesses and 10.5 million from spiritual assemblies and groups. Older believers were responsible for the vast bulk of those figures, which the Treasurer said points to the importance of children's classes, the junior youth programs, and study circles to continue to build a new generation or new generations of Baha'is from the base. Showing a stable pattern, about 7.5 million contributions came through planned giving, estate bequests, charitable gift annuities, gifts of stocks and securities, donor-advised funds, and retirement fund charitable rollovers. So some very interesting new ways to contribute, and 7.5 million came from that. Total expenditures for teaching and education the past year are expected to total about 20 million once accounting is done. The expansion of institutes is anticipated to increase this figure as the population gaining spiritual capacity from this activity has to grow exponentially. Another effort in this category is the Institute for Studies in Global Prosperity, a worldwide program supported in this country by national funds that is systematically cultivating leaders of thought who will become champions of the vision of Baha'u'llah. Also, the National Fund has millions in external commitments, including the international continental funds, international collaboration projects, which the House of Justice sometimes calls on the US NSA to help pay for facilities in countries with fewer resources around the world. The National Assembly's 107 properties nationwide they all have maintenance costs, but especially the National Center in Evanston and Wilmette. These costs have been reduced through training of existing staff in some essential renovation repair work rather than reliance on contractors. So he went into detail, and it's also in the report. You can see that. Greenacre and Llewellyn Baha'i schools, as well as the fire-ravaged Bosch property under reconstruction, will be increasingly placed at the disposal of training institutes and administrative needs, even with an eye towards their long-term vision as Baha'i centers of learning. So there's a pivot happening there. The National Archives Project, with $2.5 million goal, towards which 1.1 million has been contributed, continues to see unfolding challenges that include how to design an indoor climate system that meets archival needs in the former Publishing Trust building on Linden Avenue. The commitment to contribute to the Shrine of Abdu'l-Baha's construction continues in order to support the vision of the House of Justice of a facility that can accommodate thousands, even tens of thousands of pilgrims regularly. So here, I know this is a lot of information. I'll make sure the link is also with these videos later. The document is being passed around here at the center. And please dig deeper into it, because there's so many interesting things. There were a couple of ahas for me personally about, about that third bullet. I thought that was very interesting, 7.5 million through planned giving. What an interesting thing. And our treasurers here at the center, maybe we can have a discussion later about what that means for us here at the Austin Baha'i Center. All right, friends, we're going to keep moving. Oh, does anyone know who this gorgeous lady is on the right? Joanna Conrad. So Joanna Conrad has served in many capacities on the assembly for 30 some years, more than that. And she started working as Robert Henderson's assistant at first when she was elected on the NSA, helping. I think she was assistant secretary at that point. And these two have the most loving and beautiful relationship. They've been friends forever. And he honored her. He had a gift. He has very, very good taste. And he ordered something beautiful made out of crystal for her. Her husband was there. We honored her as she retired from her service on the National Spiritual Assembly. And so some of us went up to her and we said, Joanna, you and Dorothy Nelson, do you all remember Dorothy Nelson, Judge Nelson? You are the two women on the NSA that when we were all younger, you raised us. So we look to you as our example. So this is an end of an era for a lot of Baha'is that have known and loved Joanna. And she is, I mean, everyone loves her. She is such an epitome of a gracious lady. I have no words to describe how lovely she is. And it has gifts for her. The ground staff came and they wanted to speak to her, and they had some gifts for her. It was just very, very sweet. It was a lovely evening. But we couldn't get Bob Henderson not to cry. So, you know, it was very sweet. Oh, I don't know what happened. And I don't know where Nabil is. Uh-oh. Nabil June. Let's see. Did something. Let me see if I can move down. Sorry about this, folks that are online. Okay. Let me see if I can get this back up. No, because Nabil has to do it. So just some of the folks that I didn't actually explain, maybe while we're finding our technical assistants, there was So the convention begins when the delegates are seated. That means they start from number 1 and they go all the way down to 171, the current number. And they call out, they'll say delegate number 1, and then explain and give the name for the delegate. And then the person raises their card that has a number on it. And can you say, yeah, thank you. Nabil is back in the room. Let's see. I think it might just be hit slideshow. Is that it? My goodness. Was that it? Okay. How wonderful. And so the delegates are seated based on the number and then name. So I'll show you for those that are in the room what it looks like. Let's see. Moving with my phone because we're using that as a microphone. So here, this was my delegate card. So as I was being seated, they said delegate number 139, and they'll say your name, and you have to raise your card and you have to say here or present. So they know, so they can mark you off. And then anytime you want to speak at the convention, you have to raise your number. And we selected a chair and a secretary for the convention, and the secretary is sitting there typing in everybody's number. So by your number and your name that's associated with it, you know when to speak. And then you get up when the person before you goes up, you get up and you stand in line, and then you raise your number when you're at the podium, and then you speak. That's the procedure. And then there are certain procedures for consultation that we had. There are 2 pages I'll hand around here at the center, and I can put copies of it if anyone's interested. I'm happy to share it with you. We had 3.5 minutes only to speak, and the bell goes off. So you better be quite succinct. So there's a time limit. There is what the key procedures of the convention. There are certain, because there's 171 people and it's so long, they wanted to make sure that we could all have a chance to speak. And so I got a chance to speak once at the convention. There were others that got a chance to speak for multiple times. And so the convention, so we were seated the first day, Thursday, May 18th. In the afternoon, there was a session for the reading of the Rizvan message, the 2023 Rizvan message, consultation on the message. In the evening, we watched the movie An Expansive Prospect from the House of Justice that everyone has seen. On Friday, May 19th, the House of Worship opened to the public at 6 a.m. So if anyone wanted to go and pray, we actually met at the House of Worship. We were in the basement or the room. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the room. It has a particular name, but it's the meeting room, the circular room under the House of Worship. There was the annual report of the National Spiritual Assembly Secretary that I showed you, the annual report of the National Spiritual Assembly Treasurer, which we reviewed. And then there was a consultation on a moment of historic importance. So the afternoon of Friday, May 19th was dedicated to the reading of the Universal House of Justice's message to the American Baha'i community from July 22nd, 2020. What is the topic of that letter? Anyone remember?
Eradicating racial prejudice.
Eradicating racial prejudice. The most challenging issue facing the American community is eradicating racial prejudice. And so we had from 2:00 till 3:30, we read the message and there was consultation on the message. Then we had consultation on movement of clusters. So we began doing that in the afternoon. The archives were open in the afternoon, and the evening session was on consultation about educational endeavors and the Training Institute. And our evenings ended about 8:45 or 9:00. And then Saturday, May 20th, we had devotional program at the House of Worship in the auditorium. Auditorium's upstairs, actually. I apologize. And then we went downstairs. The morning session convened at 9 a.m. We were in devotional at 8:30 a.m. The teller's instructions and prayers were read when we came together at 9 a.m. The election of the National Spiritual Assembly began. And you can see this, as people cast their ballots, their photos were taken. So there were about 171, because there were some folks that were absent. And so this is what it looked like. You just walk up and you put your ballot in, and everybody's they would do different things. Some people would put their hands on the ballot box, others would bow down, some would put the ballots to their heart, some would look at the audience, some would not look at the audience. So you can see various people here voting and at various stages. So the gentleman on the right, his last name is Afnani. You can see that because he's putting in the second ballot. So, and it was just so beautiful, so reverent, so lovely. So just a view of it. And then while the election took place, we were only to consult if we had any questions with the counselors and or ask for support from the chief teller. So we were very blessed to have the counselors there. And the counselors are the representative to the Universal House of Justice for the election. So they actually are representing the House, which was really powerful. It gives me goosebumps even to think of that they were present in the room while the elections took place. And that was very exciting. And so here is the election. This is the elected body of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States for 2023-2024. There was a tie for the 9th place. There was a tie for the 9th place in the election of the Universal House of Justice. There was a tie for the 9th place in the NSA's election. And there was a tie for the 9th place for Austin election of our assembly as well. It's a very interesting process that more and more people are receiving votes. They handled it very beautifully. By the time that the tie was announced, some of the delegates had left, so they tried to follow the example of how it was handled by the Universal House of Justice, which apparently the tellers had called individuals who could not make it to the House of Justice elections, international elections, and they had to find those tellers to get their vote to break the 9th tie for the 9th place. Now, some of these friends don't have telephones. They don't all live near each other. So one person had to go and gather everyone. There was a lot of effort that was taken so that they could ensure that everyone had an opportunity to vote. In this case, there were some folks who had already started traveling. They were also reached by phone and their votes were taken. But in this case, the ballots only had the names of the two individuals that were in a tie. So that way they decided that's the way that they wanted to move forward. So the election was between the two individuals that were tied. So Joanna Conrad retired, as you remember, and the replacement, the person who's elected on the NSA this year, who is new, is Dr. June Thomas. You see her, she's a second from right. And June is someone that so many of us have known and loved and respected for many, many, many years. She's just amazing. She's from Michigan and is a great scholar. She used to be a professor, is a retired professor in urban planning, I believe, and does a lot of work around race unity. So it was wonderful to see the election of the NSA. And then the last thing in terms of program for us was that, we took the photograph, of course, in the afternoon after the election. And then we had consultation on contributing to social transformation, raising capacity for administration at all levels. And then we had a presentation by the Board of Trustees of the Huquq'Allah, which Huquq'Allah, of course, means the right of God. And so these are the three deputy, they're trustees, deputy trustees in the United States. So they were all there and they made a presentation. And just very quickly, it was very interesting because one of them said that the institution of Huquq'Allah will, during the course of this dispensation, contribute to the spiritualization of humanity through the promotion of a new attitude to the acquisition and use of material resources. It will provide the material resources necessary for great collective enterprises designed to improve all aspects of life and will be a powerful element in the growth of a world civilization. And the following passage from the Will and Testament of Abdu'l-Baha helps gain increased clarity on this transformative power. Quote, "The Lord, as a sign of his infinite bounties, has graciously favored his servants by providing for a fixed money offering, hukukullah. This fixed money offering causeth the people to become firm and steadfast and draweth divine increase upon them." Okay, so this is about the hukuk. So that was also something that they asked us to share with the community. And then there was some final reflections on Sunday, May 21st. So friends, that is the 115th United States National Convention, Baha'i Convention, that took place May 18th through the 21st, 2023 at the Mother Temple of the West. And it was just such a joy to serve as a delegate. I must say I was quite overwhelmed. There are moments, thank God, that there's a cornerstone in the temple. It's not, for those that are listening that may not be Baha'is, that cornerstone is not a holy site. But Abdu'l-Baha, with his own blessed hand, laid the cornerstone for the temple, and it's very easy to be drawn to that spot to pray. And I found myself doing that a lot when things would get overwhelming, is to stand in a corner near the cornerstone and just pray and reflect and pray for the Baha'i community in Austin, pray for the Assembly of Austin, pray for all the families and all the Baha'is in our community, for the National Spiritual Assembly, as well as for the work ahead, because the work, as we all know, is wonderful, it's wondrous, but we're being called to service at a level that requires steadfast service and continuous service, the new heroism. So thank you, friends. This was lovely. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. I hope this gave you a sense of the convention. Do you have any questions about the convention? Okay, let's see. Happy to answer any questions. Yes. Let me give you the phone, ask you a question. Yes.
Can you speak about the role of the Regional Baha'i Council and how it is going to be changing in the next few years, and of the change in electing of assemblies in the larger community? Those two aspects.
Yeah, the question is from here at the Baha'i Center about the regional Baha'i councils and then the election process, and if there's going to be any changes. So there are a couple of things that might be worth noting. One is that some of the responsibilities and relationship between the regional Baha'i councils and the local spiritual assemblies may shift, and that has to do with the local spiritual assemblies working closer with the regional Baha'i councils in terms of their development and capacity building and development of the resources. And the other is that there are 3 communities in United States right now that have a 2-step election process, which currently at the local level, the Baha'is elect their representatives, their 9 representatives on the local spiritual assembly. And right now, San Diego, Los Angeles, and New York have gone to a 2-step process, which they elect a delegate, like we elected a delegate, to go to national. Local communities in various parts of the community will begin to elect a delegate, and these delegates come together at the city level to then they will elect the spiritual assembly for that city. It's for communities of 400 Baha'is or more, and the plans are starting to roll out for which communities are next. Thank you for that question. Any other questions? Nabil Jun, do you see any questions? I can't see them here.
Drew just pointed out on YouTube that Foundation Hall.
Oh, thank you, Drew. Foundation Hall. Thank you for that. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if any of the slide materials you have that if you might make that available to us.
Sure. Absolutely. What we'll do is in both the YouTube and the Facebook video comment section, we'll make sure we'll have a link to this slide deck for you. And then anything, the whole thing will be in there. So it'll be a link probably to some Google file, and then you'll be able to download it. Does that make sense? Yeah, in the comment section. Yeah. Well, but yes, definitely. We'll make sure we can send it out over e-list. Nabil recommends. Make it simpler. Okay, definitely. Happy to do that. And then also maybe the link to the treasurer's report and the secretary's report, the link to the annual report, anything that you all might need. Happy to share that. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I wonder if you heard certain things that other communities are doing that seem to be helping them with managing complexity or growth. And it may be in the deepening sessions or in the consultation, the delegate. I don't know what the spaces are, but I would love to hear if you learned things.
Sure. Gosh, there was so much that it's hard to actually go back and rethink about what exactly stood up, but what a wonderful question. I think the challenges, the decentralization keep coming up as a challenge in terms of some of the communities trying to, like our community, trying to figure out what happens at the local feast in the communities versus neighborhoods. Do we have a community-wide feast? Do we have neighborhood feast? Those were some of the things that came out. Activities, direct teaching, core activities. There was a lot of discussion around that, and various communities are learning. I was saying last night at feast that it's sort of like a spiritual cha-cha. You go forward 3 steps, you come back 1. It's very much a learning process. So specifically in terms of naming communities and projects, I don't quite have that, but I know that there's a lot of learning around, we're all learning together. Nobody's figured it out. Let me just say that, maybe that's easier. But there is a lot of learning to be able to share with other communities, hopefully through our regional Baha'i councils. Hopefully that would be, but we were in Austin, we're considered to be in the foremost of growth and activities. So that was very interesting to hear that, because when we're in it, it's like, oh gosh, we're learning so much ourselves. And it was a good reminder that we're not quite at zero. We're doing some things in Austin, but we're continually are learning. So I'm sorry I did not answer that very well at all, but I think we're all together in the same boat. I'm not hearing, or I did not hear, that anyone has cracked the code on managing complexity. There are some communities who are turning to, hiring individuals that are more dedicated to certain lines of action if they have the resources, but not everybody has a resource for that. But as we read within the guidance, how to deepen consultation, how to begin to understand what growth looks like from a new perspective. Those are some of the things that they were exploring. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Let me bring the phone to you. So
my question is that, we have unit convention where we, gather the convention's thoughts and transmit it to the National Assembly. Is there any occasion where they prospectively comment about the information that they have collectively received from unit conventions that they would like to then, having processed it, be communicated back to the units? Because it seems like, I don't even remember, it was so long ago, what our recommendations were to the convention. I suspect you're not responsible for transmitting that. I think the convention transmits that information to this National Spiritual Assembly. But is there a occasion where they say, either directly or indirectly, this is the kind of information that we receive from unit conventions, and this is what we would like for you to convey? That was a common theme. This is what we would like for you to convey back to your unit.
Yes. Thank you very much. So I think what the National Spiritual Assembly wants to convey back to us is in the Secretary's report and the Treasurer's report. And in terms of, so it's documented in that way because everything is centering on growth and you know, in the 9-year plan. So in terms of specifically, because I do remember we had a very vibrant discourse here, and that all has been communicated to them. I think and this is my own understanding, I don't know if this is exactly the system, but it seemed like they had read through everything in terms of their responses to our questions in real time in the convention. You could see that they actually have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in various communities because their responses were very nuanced. It was very interesting. It's not one size fits all. It depends on what the question is and they're able to respond. A couple of times, and you could actually, during the presentation from the Secretary of the NSA, you could actually stand up and say, I have a question for Ken Bowers. And he would stand up and respond to your question. And one of the questions I asked was about online voting, OBS. And he stood up and responded to that. And he said to have our assembly follow up with the NSA to make sure that the concerns and the challenges in the community are communicated to the NSA because they're currently working on it. So those were some of the responses they gave. Very rarely did they come out with, this is the way it is. It was more often, that's very interesting. This is what we're trying to learn more. Please continue to communicate with us. We're trying to learn at this point. Yes.
So to follow up on Ruzbe's question, as I recall, at unit convention, you know, one of the asks from our convention was if there are any best practices of new learning that as far as managing complexity and things is, and if I heard you right, we can go to the National Convention. Where do we go to kind of, you said it was responded to, but in a general way, where do we look?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is on usbnc.org, using our Baha'i ID, once we get in, there's a whole section on the convention. And so National Convention. So please look in there. A lot of this material is also from there, gleaned from that, because that is distilling a lot of the learning. But if you have other questions, please let me know and I will find for you where we can get more answers. I mean, this has now come up a couple of times about best practices of things that we can learn from other communities. My sense was that the whole country is learning. Everybody's learning. All the communities are learning. So it was not like here's one community versus another. There was this, one thing that I failed to mention that was very stunning. I could not believe it was happening. I saw it last year as a delegate and again this year. No one would stand up to make any comment without sharing guidance. It was very strange. I mean, not strange, interesting. Sometimes they would, someone would jump up to respond to something, but they would always, as much as possible, tie it to guidance. And that was a wonderful thing to see. So it wasn't a lot of opinions. It was, here's how we're trying to put guidance into practice. Here's what our community is doing, and here's our current understanding or our insights. Any questions, Nabil June online? Anything else up there? And I think
the request is people are thanking you on Zoom, but also saying if we can have this report for our Persian Baha'i friends, but in course.
This, yes, I will do my best. I will. I know who's probably whoever has requested that, you're going to be my translators. Tayyebe, all right. We'll work it out. Absolutely. Happy to do it. And if anyone knows anyone else who would like to get this report, it is my duty and my real privilege to be able to do that. So I'm available anytime anyone wants it, and to individuals, groups, happy to come over for a home visit. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you were able to get something from this report today. Thank you.